and welcome back to Only One Stories. My name is Bonnie, and I'm going to tell you a really wild story today. This is the story of Leslie Wilfred. And before I start the story, I just wanted to say I do not mean to disrespect anybody who's involved in this story or anybody who's related to the people involved. I also wanted to just give a warning that there is mention of some abuse to children as well as miscarriage. Thank you to Crime Reel YouTube channel for introducing me to this story and for some of the details. There's not a lot of articles on this one, so this might be a new true crime story for you guys. Leslie and Chris Wilfred got married in 2007, and they each brought children from previous relationships with them to the marriage. So Leslie had 4 kids and Chris had 1 son, and pretty much all of the kids had complicated medical issues. Leslie's 13-year-old son had his gallbladder removed when he was younger due to severe vomiting, and he also had this some kind of medical issue with his liver, so he was actually on a liver transplant list. And Chris was hoping that he could help out his stepson by possibly donating part of his liver. Leslie's 11-year-old daughter was actually conceived from a assault that Leslie had by a co-worker of hers, which resulted in the pregnancy. And that daughter was actually biracial. Okay, so I'm editing this now, and I just realized that I might have made it seem like being biracial is in some way like a medical issue, the way I worded it here. So that is not at all what I meant. What I was trying to do was just list information that I had found out about each of the children, and I did not mean to imply in any way that this child had some kind of a problem or a medical problem because she was conceived this way or that she was biracial. So I just wanted to make that clear. And she also had a 9-year-old daughter who was suffering from a terminal cancer. And she also had another son who was, I think, around 7 years old. And Chris's son, who was 10, actually had issues of his own. He was very, very violent. When the two of them got married, the son apparently did not like his new stepmother or family, and he was prone to these extremely violent, angry outbursts, which resulted in Leslie and Chris often keeping him separate away from the other kids. So Leslie was helping, obviously raise all of these 5 children with complex needs, and she was training to become a registered nurse. And in the summer of 2008, she found out that she was pregnant. Not only that, but she was pregnant with twins. In October of 2008, they called the police, and the police came to their home because Leslie and Chris said that Chris's son was threatening the family with a knife. He was in one of his angry outbursts, and they were really afraid for their safety. Because of this episode or event with Chris's son, CPS did become involved with the family, and they met regularly with Leslie to discuss Chris's son's behavior and how they could keep everybody in the family safe. On November the 10th, Leslie was rushed to the hospital with, a problem with her pregnancy. So she actually had to deliver the babies despite the fact that she was only 5 months along. So the babies did not survive. She said that when the babies were delivered, they each took 1 breath and then they passed away. She named the babies, and apparently the hospital actually cremated the baby's remains like right away. So she called Chris and the family and let them know the awful news. And so she went home and started planning for their funeral. So on November the 13th, they held a funeral for the 2 the twins that did not make it. And the family was all there. They went to they had a church that they held the funeral at, and each of the remains were in a little teddy bear urn. So they had these 2 little teddy bear urns and a picture of the ultrasound. And it was just so sad for all of the family, especially for the children who were really looking forward to, obviously, these little baby siblings that they were going to have. And Leslie had them read this letter that she had written, that was written from the point of view of the babies, and it was called like a letter to my daddy. And Chris's son was not allowed to come to the funeral. Prior to the funeral, when CPS had been having these meetings and discussions with Leslie, they were a little bit suspicious, is maybe the wrong word, but they thought it was a little bit strange that when talking about Chris's son, she said that she was actually worried about the safety of her unborn twins, worried that maybe his behavior would affect their health or their safety. So they kind of noted that. And then when they heard about this funeral for these twins, they actually did get the police involved. So the police came to the family and they started to investigate Leslie's story a little bit more. The police went to the hospital where Leslie had given birth, and when they did some digging, they found out some really disturbing things. It turns out that they couldn't find any information on Leslie's pregnancy, her birth, or the twins' death. It didn't happen. And when they, looked into the doctor to ask him questions about it, the doctor's name that Leslie gave them didn't exist. Like, she just made up the entire thing. She had faked this pregnancy, and even Chris was fooled, which I don't, adding in my own personal opinion here, how do you fake a pregnancy that much to the point where you're sleeping next to somebody and they believe it? I mean, that is just really crazy. It turns out that Leslie had her tubes tied before Chris and she got married. So she wouldn't even have been able to get pregnant. Yeah. So police actually did some further digging, and they looked through the family's home because they thought, if she's lying about this, let's just check the house and make sure everything is okay with her other children. So when they went to the home, they found that the dining room area had been basically turned into a full nursery with everything you can think of that you would need for bringing, she was about to bring home these 2 new babies. So it had the cribs and the clothes and, everything else. And they also found on her computer that they looked through the computer history, and they found that she had actually ordered these little teddy bear urns 5 days before she was rushed to the hospital with this emergency. So obviously she had planned the whole deceit, the whole lie. But most disturbingly is what they found in a cupboard. In a cupboard in the main bedroom, they found a 2-foot by 2-foot wooden box that was actually screwed to the floor and to the wall. And inside the box was a pillow and a blanket and some writing on the inside and some kind of straps. And when they asked her about it, the police were like, "What is this?" She said, initially she lied and said, it was for an animal that they used to have or something. But the truth is far, far worse. They had been putting Chris's son, 10-year-old son, into this box at night to sleep in. They say because it was for their other children's safety, for the safety of the family, they had to lock him up. And there was a lock on the outside of this cupboard. So he was just being abused. I just can't imagine. They sent Chris's son for evaluation, and he had none of the, behavior issues or whatever they were saying he had. He was totally fine, other than the fact that he had PTSD from the abuse that he had suffered from them. Chris's son was constantly just being separated from the other children, being treated totally different from Leslie's kids. And, people who were near the family said that he was often not allowed to go out and join the family for different events and for occasions. He was just always kept separate, which is heartbreaking. The little 9-year-old girl did not have cancer. She was actually physically totally fine, but psychologically, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a young child who being told that you're about to die from cancer. But she was going to cancer treatments. She was being taken to hospital visits and to different things. And Leslie was telling her 9-year-old daughter that she had terminal cancer when it turns out she had nothing wrong with her at all. So that must do something to you emotionally and psychologically. And as you might have already guessed, the 13-year-old boy did not have anything wrong with his liver. He was totally fine. And so the family started to think back and think maybe the gallbladder surgery was not necessary. Perhaps it was also another thing that Leslie had conjured up. I mean, he did have the surgery. So how did she fake the illness? Maybe she gave him something to induce the vomiting so much that then she convinced a doctor that he needed this surgery. And then when it came to the daughter that was biracial, family members say that she noticed the attention that somebody in her family got when they had a baby who was mixed. And so there's no way to prove whether or not the baby was conceived from an assault or not. I'm not going to speculate on that, but because of all the other lies that she had told, who knows? It turns out that all of the kids had been told their whole lives that they suffered from a variety of different illnesses. And so now it turns out that none of them had anything physically wrong with them. So in 2008, both Chris and Leslie were arrested. They were arrested for cruelty to children as well as theft by deception. Because keep in mind, not only did they lie to the children, they lied to the entire community. I say they, but it was really just Leslie. Chris apparently had no idea about any of this. He was really in the dark. I don't know how. I don't know, but it was really Leslie who actually, she got a lot of donations towards the cancer treatments and all the other medical issues that she had lied about. When Leslie was assessed to see what her problem was, it turns out that she just has a personality disorder, and she obviously has Munchausen as well as Munchausen by proxy. Just in case you're not sure, the definition of Munchausen syndrome is a psychological disorder characterized by the intentional feigning, exaggeration, or induction of symptoms of a disease or injury in order to undergo diagnostic tests, hospitalization, or medical or surgical treatment. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a psychological disorder in which a caregiver, especially a parent, induces the symptoms of disease or injury in their child, falsifies the child's medical history, or tampers with the child's diagnostic specimens in order to create a situation that typically requires medical attention. And that's a condition that I find so fascinating. Most people are aware of the more well-known cases like Dee Dee and Gypsy, but this is a case that I had not previously known about. So Chris was charged with one count of child abuse because of the way that he was treating his son and the wooden box. I don't know how, even if you are totally lied to and you're gullible enough to believe all of the things that Leslie was saying, how do you get convinced that it's okay to put your child, lock them in a cupboard in a box? That part, there's no excuse. In 2011, Leslie was sentenced to 8 years in prison and 30 years probation, where she is not allowed to have contact with her children unless she has specific permission from the court. So I don't know what kind of a connection or relationship the children have now with either parent. So Leslie is out now, living her life. Pretty sure I found her on social media. I did one of those rabbit hole deep dives, looking everywhere for more information, because as I said, I couldn't find a lot of videos or articles on this case. But so she never became a nurse, thank goodness. Luckily, she was caught and removed from her children before it got worse, because as I'm sure you know, a lot of these cases end up with far worse physical trauma and sometimes even death. I don't understand the psychology of Munchausen or Munchausen by proxy, but like I said, I just find it so fascinating, these stories. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have another case, whether it's Munchausen related or just another true crime story, let me know in the comments what you would like to hear me cover. Thank you for joining me on Only One Stories. If you would like to follow me, I am on TikTok and on Instagram, and you can also check out my little shop called Only One Knit Toys, where I make adorable little worry pets. So check it out. The links are in the description below. Thank you to everybody, and like and subscribe and follow and all of that kind of thing. See you next time.